The Mind of Mansion is live with my man, Pete Nova. He is new to the Player Profiler team this year. He is absolutely destroying a lot of his videos on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Check them out. They are some of the best performing that we have out there. He's super active on Reddit. He's super active on Twitter X, other social media platforms. This guy is just a rising star, if you will. And, it was great because as Theo was exiting stage left, he's like, hey, make sure you elevate Pete Nova. And I'm actually going to be on with Theo on the Dynasty Life show on Friday. So we get a lot happening, a lot of connection points here. And so talk to us about all the things you're doing with Player Profiler right now.
Yeah, so as you kind of alluded to, me and Chuck Bass have we've taken over the Rises and Fallers show. It seems like every single week that segment seems to gain more and more traction, and I honestly think it's probably the most fun show that I do. I do content with Player Profiler. I even do some stuff on the side, and I just find the Rises and Fallers show to be a lot of fun. It's nice to kind of see where drafters' heads are at. And try to find edges in that regard. And then, just doing some standalone content with Player Profiler as well. But we did just record our top 6. It's a wide receiver kind of sleeper video for Rises and Fallers. So that's going to come out tomorrow, most likely, or Friday. Excited to continue the momentum here.
All right. So I respect that show very much. Okay, it's a great show. Risers and Fallers, check it out. It's also... it's available on the Player Profiler podcast feed, Risers and Fallers, Risers and Fallers, Risers and Fallers. However, this show has seniority. This show has been around for close to 10 years. And we need to talk about sleepers on this show. So why don't you pick one of those? Why don't we tease the sleeper segment, this whole sleeper video that you have dropping. And let's talk about one of the sleepers that you enjoyed most talking about.
Yeah, I think for me it's Cedric Tillman. I think he's pretty forgotten about. I know there's a lot of hype on Jerry Jeudy right now, but Cedric Tillman, I think the eye-opening thing with Tillman is when you look at Tillman's splits in the beginning of the season, the first 6 weeks, Tillman averaged just 10 routes per game and wasn't fantasy relevant. But then when he got to week 7 to 11, where he was a top fantasy receiver, he was averaging 45 routes per game. And that was 10 targets, 6 catches, 75.5 yards per game, and 18.6 fantasy points. And then obviously he suffered the injury in week 12. But I think it just goes to show when he got his opportunity, he made the most of it. And I think the biggest concern is who's the quarterback going to be, but I think it'll be Joe Flacco week 1. And I think Stefanski likes him. And there's really Deontay Johnson's like the only other guy there, Thrash too. So I think he's penciled in to be, possibly the number 2 target owner, maybe even ahead of Njoku possibly.
He is injured. So he's missed a little bit of mini camp with this injury, which you hate that. For a young player but he's carving out a role. He's best comparable to Nico Collins. Like, this is a 3rd-round pick with a big body who can make plays, and he's a unique talent in that he's what they have on the perimeter. Like, that's it, right? And so you could see some clogging of the middle. Like, Jeudy succeeds in a similar area of the field. I know Judy's a little bit more of a downfield player, but he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the frame to be an outside clasher. So there's going to be plenty of in-breaking routes for Jeudy. That's where Deontay Johnson thrives down the seam. That's where David Njoku is going to be. They have a hollowed-out offensive line. Their run game is not going to be very prolific because they won't be able to run the ball if they're going to be playing from behind so much, which is why I don't like Judkins. And I've talked about this. The 2 players in this offense that I have any interest in whatsoever are Tillman and Njoku. That's the list. Jeudy is overvalued to me, and Judy's getting steamed up to a place where it's like, okay, I have players that have the passing game to themselves, like a DK Metcalf. There's just a Jauan Jennings, a player who's in a similar role, but in a much better offense, much better quarterback. So there's players with either more upside in better situations or players that actually have even less target competition on bad teams. So for that reason, Jerry Jeudy's in sort of a no man's land ADP-wise for me. And it's just, I don't like to invest big capital on players on bad teams. And if I can get one that's in the double-digit rounds, that's a hell of a lot better than investing, a guy at, whatever it is, pick 65 or no, not doing it. I mean, I can do it. I can make a case for it. Like I said, you can make a case for a guy like DK Metcalf. There's enough sort of athletic upside, big play ability, a long history of air yards, a symbiosis with Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk about all this later. We're certainly going to talk about all this later. We'll get into that. But for that, it's just Jeudy and Judkins specifically, the guys that are going the earliest. I think you'll find on a lot of the bad teams, the worst teams in the league, if you just avoid the two most expensive assets on the worst teams, that's one of the cheat codes in fantasy, is it not?
I would say it is. The only counter I would have is like, for me, if in Judy's range for guys that are going around him, like I'd rather take a chance on like a Chris Olave, to be honest with you.
That's what I'm talking about. If you're going to take a guy, he better have some juice. He better have some upside juice. A guy like Metcalf, a guy like Olave, they have upside juice, and they're more sort of target dominance in their offenses than we have with Jeudy. So it's like the guy's a bigger play threat, and he's more of a dominant target in that offense. They're all bad offenses. Welcome to the Minders Mansion program. A young gun, that player profiler, a rising star, and filling the shoes of one Theo Greminger, the best of our ability. He's a riser, he's a faller. Today he's only rising. Here with me, it is Pete Nova.
Well, hell of an intro. I don't know if I could do it any better. I got some big shoes to fill, but out of respect to Theo, but it's been a lot of fun, and I guess I'm interested to see what an in-season at player profiler is going to look like. That's what I'm really excited about. The off season, it's kind of been just a lot of speculation, but once training camp gets around, like, I'm excited to fire off some spicy takes, and maybe people won't always agree with it, but that's what makes the fun of it all.
Apparently this idea that JJ McCarthy would have been the number one pick in the draft was a hot take by me. I was a little bit shocked by that. I was like, really? Is this even, what? Really? Because I think it's one of the most obvious things. And I was talking to Theo Greminger himself. He called me and he's like, hey, listen, I want to make sure we're locked in for this coming Friday. You're going to come on the show. I was like, great. He's like, I see you're really into JJ McCarthy. And I'm like, am I really into him? I'm only stating the most obvious things, but apparently that makes me very into JJ McCarthy. And to me, it's like, it's one of the easiest layups that the fantasy gods have ever given us. It's like, hey, we have this young national champion with the prototypical body and the athleticism and a big arm, right? And he is totally under the radar with one of the best supporting casts of weapons you're going to find, an upgraded offensive line. It's like all the things we look for in terms of excuses to fade guys. Oh, they lost their left tackle and all these things. Like when you're talking about like a Tua or someone, a quarterback you would never touch, right? Just think about the counterfactual. Okay, well, give me a quarterback where everything is going in the right direction. Give me a quarterback who has not only Justin Jefferson, but also TJ Hawkinson. Where they just drafted a brand new first round pick along the offensive line, where they have one of the better offensive coordinators. You want to give me offensive coordinator talk? Fine. How would I give you a guy that has one of the best reputations in the league. And now we basically get a free roll on a guy that didn't play last year, and it just seems too easy. It seems too easy. And of course, if he had gone back to Michigan, he would have been awesome, and he just would have confirmed what everyone was thinking the previous year when they saw him win the national championship, and he would have been the locked-in number one pick from like October onward, and there just would have been a couple draft analysts out there with their hot takes that, oh yeah, but Cam Ward has a bigger arm. And so there would have been a couple people like trying to get spicy with their analysis, with their, Cam Ward is the sleeper for the 101. And then there would have been all this debate, or, it would have been faux debate, right? It wouldn't know, everyone would have known, but then there's uncertainty, and then the team would have been playing it up. We're not sure. We're still evaluating both options, but everyone would have known all along the 101 was gonna be JJ McCarthy.
Well, I don't know. I mean, apparently they're saying that Aaron Rodgers was that they were worried, and that Rodgers was the guy that they were going to bring in there because they had concerns about McCarthy. But in all
they
seriousness,
sure let Sam Darnold go fast. They sure let Sam Darnold exit stage very quickly. Bye-bye, Sam. They really tried to retain Sam Darnold, didn't they? No, they were like, we're fine, guys. We have JJ McCarthy. What they saw in that small window of time, he performed very well, and I think that he basically proved to the coaches last year in camp, I'm the guy.
Well, and honestly, I think the time off could have been more to his benefit, right? I mean, a humbling experience for a guy to have to sit for an entire year, and doesn't get thrown into the fire extremely quickly. And I think there's a lesson to be learned about that. And Darnold, for what it's worth, I mean, Darnold, obviously, leaving the building, but I'm sure there's also things he picked up and learned from Darnold, who was thrown to the side in many situations in his entire career. So I'm sure he picked up some lessons there. And when I think about McCarthy and I think about the offense, I like Cam Ward. I think there was just a deficiency at the quarterback position in this draft, and he got steamed up to the 101 because the Titans were kind of desperate. And so I don't think it's crazy to say JJ McCarthy, would be the 101 ahead of Cam Ward. If you put Cam Ward in last year's class, I don't think that he goes in the top 10 like JJ McCarthy did. So I don't think it's that crazy. And honestly, I think people put a little too much stock that he was in a running offense in Michigan, and people seem to think that he doesn't have a strong arm. I don't know where people come up with those kinds of things, but if Kevin O'Connell likes him, and this is a guy who has consistently, helped bring back quarterbacks. I mean, he brought in, he was there with Baker I'm pretty sure when the Rams were there for that little stint Baker had too. So if Kevin O'Connell believes in him, I'm probably going to side with a guy who, when you look at even the success that Cousins had, before leaving the building, and then obviously Darnold, I trust O'Connell to give us fantasy success. And I don't know if you want to transition to fantasy success for McCarthy, but what I would say, at least, and maybe a teaser to later on, when you look at, what they've been able to accomplish for quarterbacks in that offense in terms of Kevin O'Connell, the last 3 seasons in Minnesota, when he's had a starting quarterback, I know Cousins missed a little bit of time, Darnold started last year. Every quarterback's been inside the top 11 in points per game and have averaged 19 points per game, the starting quarterback. So I think there's a world where
Nick Mullins have like 400-yard games in this offense.
He did, and there's a world where McCarthy's being underdrafted at the moment.
There's not a world. It's happening now. He's being underdrafted in all formats. He's a great pick. I think there's rushing upside there. We on our rankings, playerprofiler.com. Go there, get our rank. We have the Scott Fishbowl rankings. We have seasonal rankings, best ball rankings, best ball superflex rankings. I mean, IDP, everything. I mean, that is one of the great resources, an incredible deal at Player Profiler. $45 to just sign up for get every Dynasty rankings, everything. And you're going to find that JJ McCarthy actually ahead of Justin Herbert. Because basically, he's Justin Herbert, but in a more pass-friendly situation. And whenever people talk about Kevin O'Connell, just insert the name Justin Jefferson. It's the Justin Jefferson offense. And if you had to pinpoint the reason why all of these fringe quarterbacks and scrap heap quarterbacks do so well, Justin Jefferson has a lot to do with that, right? Just like if for whatever reason quarterback lands in Cincinnati, there were weeks where Browning in Cincinnati has, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah,
like Browning had weeks, right? So it doesn't. If you have the right receivers and an offensive line that can at least partially protect you. But now, the idea that he's going to have these receivers and one of the better offensive lines in the sport, and they don't have this sort of run-first mentality like they have in Los Angeles, this is one of the best sources of fantasy points at value, too, because TJ Hawkins is not that expensive. Aaron Jones not that expensive. The other receivers aren't that expensive. Jordan Addison, now he has this DUI court date. Jalen Naylor, is he draftable? Could you draft this guy in a best ball league?
I think you can. I think Ty Felton's kind of interesting too. For a team that did not have a ton of draft picks, for them to spend, I think it was the last pick in the 3rd round, to spend, I think they had 4 or 5 draft picks this year. To spend a 3rd round pick on Ty Felton is also kind of sneaky too. And if you're looking for like a last pick in a best ball draft, you can easily get Felton. I don't mind having exposure to Naylor either. Maybe intertwining if you have a stack, and maybe taking a chance on, you could probably take a chance on both at the end if you really, really want to. Though I wouldn't.
I love that. Yeah, both these guys. I mean, talking about the final round pick, like a 20th round of a best ball draft. If you just oscillated back and forth between Naylor and Felton, I don't hate it. They'll both produce at some point. I mean, we're talking about the number 3 and number 4, which become the number 2 and number 3 wide receivers in the event that Jordan Addison is suspended or there's an injury. Either this is a team, an offense that you want exposure to. That is the bottom line. That's what I'm always looking for. And I'm looking, and it is an interesting comp, the Chargers versus the Vikings, because I think there's similarities between these quarterbacks, between the situations. It's just one is clearly pass first and one is clearly run first. Another place I like to look for fantasy production is in San Francisco, because this defense is headed in the wrong direction. Same thing with Minnesota. I mean, that's the problem. Minnesota's defense isn't as good as the Chargers' defense. That's part of the problem with the Chargers. Your defense has too many playmakers, where a team like the Vikings, they're just sort of trying to put it together with and get it figured out with smoke and mirrors. So San Francisco going to have more of a smoke and mirrors defense. Minnesota, smoke and mirrors defense. And then so you start at the top and you start to work your way down at the ADPs. Start with Christian McCaffrey. His ADP, what is his ADP going to be in August? End of August, Christian McCaffrey's ADP is going to be what?
I think you're looking at a guy that I unless there is some unfortunate news this season, in the off season, where maybe he gets hurt or tweaks something, you're looking at a guy that I don't think is going to go higher than 108 on consensus. But I think he's probably somewhere between that 108 to 110 area. I do think, sharp drafters that drafted early were getting him at the back end to middle of the 2nd round in best ball. He's not even most best ball drafts, he's not even going in that round. So I expect, I don't know, man. I feel like I feel like an addict. Like, I just feel like I gotta get that itch of drafting him on my team. So I'm sure I'll have some exposure. It's going to be hard not to.
Yeah. I was doing some of these fast draft flex 4 game. You draft 6 guys, the top 4 enter your lineup every week. It's the fastest, easiest best ball game out there. And his ADP is starting to come up. Now, in the mock draft ADP, I was still able to get him in the 2nd round, but the real life ADPs, the real life drafts, it's not going to be in the 2nd round for long. The most recent Flex 4 draft that just happened, Christian McCaffrey went at the 106. The 106 on Fast Draft for Christian McCaffrey is a hell of a lot closer to optimal than like the 206. The 206, when he was going at the 206, embarrassing. I mean, absolutely embarrassing. And again, based on the ADP, there looks like there's a world where you could get him at the 206, but that's just no longer the reality. The bottom line, though, he's still going at the 1-2 turn in a lot of drafts. In a lot of drafts, he's still going at the 1-2 turn, and you just have to milk this Christian McCaffrey cow until you start to see him there at the 106, 107, which is where he belongs. He was notoriously injury prone for years, and he was exactly that. Everyone had eyes wide open about what the risks were with Christian McCaffrey last year, and he was the consensus 101. For whatever reason, there was this breaking point that fantasy gamers reach where, okay, I'm not going to get burned again. The injury happened early in the season, and it nuked all my teams with McCaffrey, and then he came back, and then he went out again. It was just the cadence of when the injury happened and how he recovered and how he got re-injured. It was so devastating for fantasy gamers that they held him on their roster all year and got nothing for it, that was just too much. It created too much PTSD for fantasy gamers, and they punished him and put him in the second round for many months, and that was simply irrational. And those that were able to think clearly and not suffer from fantasy PTSD were able to take advantage. There's still a few slots of inefficiency with the Christian McCaffrey ADP, but it's almost gone.
Yeah, there was a lot of times in this offseason where, especially in best ball drafts, where I'm getting, Brian Thomas and Christian McCaffrey on the 1-2 turn, even sometimes Nico and McCaffrey. Like, I mean, those are like stacks that, I mean, not stacks, it's not on the same team, but those first two picks, like, I mean, there's a world where Nico Collins, if he's fully healthy for 17 games, is the wide receiver 1, and then you're getting McCaffrey, who we've seen do it, right? So those were pretty awesome costs to get him at. What I would say about McCaffrey that's interesting is if you look at the end of his schedule this year, he gets the Panthers, he gets the Browns, he gets the Titans, he gets the Colts, and he gets the Bears. Those are his last 5 games, including the championship.
What?
That looks like a pretty juicy schedule to me for fantasy points. He's got a really, really easy schedule once they get past the Texans. They get the Giants, who I think that defense is going to be better than they were last year, which isn't really hard to do. It's the Rams, the Cardinals, but that 5-game stretch at the end, man, like, he could go on a tear and help win some people championships pretty easily.
Yes, like high stakes, FFPC, code is Underworld. You get a $25 deposit match, $25 off your first team over there at FFPC. And anytime you're playing like the main event, any of these managed leagues, in the fantasy playoffs, Christian McCaffrey, man. Christian McCaffrey. And there's more players on this 49ers team that we're going to talk about. But first, a couple things. We're going to talk about the Fast Draft Origins tournament. The all-rookie game is still happening. It is 65% full. So there's still time to do your rookie drafts, load up on players like Taj Brooks, load up on some of these running backs in these, where you can basically do a all-rookie best ball draft at Fast Draft, get the Fast Draft app, and $5,000 to first. So you can just do rookie drafts and win $5,000. My recommendation, do whatever you want. My recommendation is to draft more running backs in any other positions, especially guys like Taj Brooks. You want to sprinkle in like a Ty Felton, like you talked about. I think that's also a good idea in the Origins game, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Also, if you like this, go ahead and like it. If you're watching it on YouTube and you like it, like it. Want to put a comment in here? Please participate in the chat. And the beauty is when you like the show, it's more likely that yet more people will then watch and join the chat. So if you like, and we have a very active chat. If you want the chat even more active, you want even more chatter in the chat, like the show, and then we're going to supercharge the chat. So I think that's going to be the strategy, and then we're going to get deeper into the 49ers after this. Rookie, 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 rookie. It's all about rookie talk in fantasy football right now. So why not go use all that knowledge to do something other than a mock draft? Chris Jimino won $8,000 with just 2 teams last year, and each draft took 5 minutes. That's pretty good ROI. You can start doing rookie drafts for money today on Fast Draft. The Origins tournament is live. It is the place to go and monetize your knowledge of rookies and use your favorite player profiler host promo code for a $25 deposit match. Now let's go start drafting faster. It's actually a $50 deposit match now. So it's up to $50 deposit match. That's I ran an outdated. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to run I'm not going to run the updated ad. In fact, I complained about a buzzing sound during that, and we didn't get to the end, and I realized that the promo code was outdated. But there is actually a $50 with. And what is your code, Pete?
Nova, Nova.
Code Nova, $50 deposit match. And besides Ty Felton, who's one more rookie that people should be drafting later in the 4th, 5th round.
I typically don't love to spend capital on wide receivers as much. I'm taking a chance on Maffa a little bit from the Cowboys. I'm not extremely bullish on his situation. Bullish on him as a player, but there is a world where he could be the early down back if Javonte, and Miles Sanders, don't work out, which, I mean, it's not like they're extremely talented players at this point in their career. So yeah, I think I try to get as much exposure to running backs in these fast drafts. So I'm taking a little bit of a dart throw in some drafts on him.
I hadn't thought of him. Right. I'm so locked in on Jaden Blue. I hadn't really thought of him because there's all this whole narrative around Jaden Blue can be an every down back. And sometimes that's one of those areas where when the coach comes out and he says that, a 200-pound back can carry the load, that gets me, man. That's just one of those narratives that gets me. I should be more skeptical. But then again, we've seen all these James Cooks come out and actually do it. So now I'm more of a sucker for it. It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Hey, it's no shade on Jaden Blue. I like Blue, but again, you're trying to get different types of exposures, right? That's how you win these contests. So again, I'm not super high on Maffa as a player, but it's a room that feels pretty wide open.
Yeah. So if you just want to, in drafts where you're not, so on a game like Origins, even in Flex 4, you do not want to mess around with negative correlation. Okay. Mm-hmm. So one thing you do not want to do that. So what you would, if in the instances where you didn't get Blue, those would be the teams where you might draft Maffa. Now, I'm way out ahead on Jauan Jennings. Now, he also, I love this man. I mean, the players I like getting nicked up in camp, it's just, I'm like, oh, yeah, but we like we were talking earlier, like, oh, yeah, I love this guy, but he's nicked up.
Yeah.
Same with Jauan Jennings. He has a calf injury, and he's missed a bunch of camp, if not all of camp. I don't think it matters when you're a 27-year-old and you are the originator of the dog rating. I mean, when Cody Carpentier said that he had to create the dog rating in order to properly value Jauan Jennings, that made me so happy. And then to hear him not be way out ahead on Jauan Jennings, knowing that this guy was like the original dog, I was like, shame on you, Cody. You should, just on principle, be way out ahead on this Jauan Jennings. And now the whispers are coming in. Oh, now we know Ayuk's going to be on the pop. Yeah, that whisper campaign started a long time ago. That was a known that Brandon Ayuk going to end up on the pop. I mean, how many seasons do we have to do this with these guys recovering from these ACL tears? Then we have a second year guy who has a lot of upside. He's very exciting. Didn't play the full season last year. Still is a work in progress. Again, had some really promising end of year performances. But the guy I'm still focused on is Jennings over a Pearsall, certainly over an Ayuk. How do you feel about the receivers in San Francisco?
So this will probably be the first time we disagree in that I'm avoiding Ayuk. There's been a lot of people out there that think you're getting him at a value, but if this guy starts on the pup, misses 4 games, we're looking at possibly him starting off slow. I don't want any parts of that. I don't want to draft injured players. I try to avoid that. Now Jennings being nicked up, I'm not concerned about that right now. I'm trying to. It's kind of the same thing where I'm trying to get exposure a little bit to both. I do prefer the cheaper guy in Pearsall who goes a little bit behind him. The reason I'm in on Pearsall is similar to the Cedric Tillman argument, where when I think about Ricky Pearsall and you look into the numbers, and I'm grabbing it real quick on the show sheet that I have. But Ricky Pearsall averaged 13 routes per game when you exclude the final 2 games of the season. In terms of like when he did have that breakout, right? He obviously got shot, then he came back. It was kind of a slow grind, and he only was playing 13 routes per game. The final 2 games, 35 routes, 43 routes, and we saw him pull off those big performances: 10 targets, 8 receptions, 141 and a touchdown, 28.7 fantasy points. Now that was in the championship. You probably weren't starting Ricky Pearsall in the championship unless you really had a deep team and maybe some injuries or maybe some guys were sitting out. And then, obviously the next week after that, he had 8 targets, 6 receptions for 69 and a touchdown, 18.9 fantasy points. So I think both guys can be successful. I think the encouraging thing with Jauan Jennings is the target rate, targeted number 11 in target rate for player profiler, 28.4%. So I think that's encouraging that he did become a favorite of Brock Purdy even before all these injuries happened last year. I felt like they started to kind of grow a connection before Ayuk got hurt. And I know Debo was kind of up and down, but I'm fine getting exposure to both. I think the unknown, sometimes I just want to take a chance on that upside. And I look at Pearsall was a first-round pick. And, when he did get that opportunity, we saw those routes go up. And when he was running more routes, he was successful during those last 2 weeks.
I like Pearsall too. I like Pearsall. Listen, I like them both. It's just that I'm very, very bullish on Jennings. I mean, it's just there's so many reasons why both these guys are underrated. I think Pearsall probably has the most reasons because he also had the hamstring injury. I mean, there's just a lot of things. You're coming back from the gunshot wound, and you're a rookie, and there's so many reasons why his opportunity wasn't greater last year. And just Jennings, the fact that he's not athletic, the fact that he was a 7th-round pick, it's just there's so many biases working against him. This is a great place to find value. Kittle also a value, right? So I think we got McCaffrey, I think we got Pearsall, I think we got Jennings, and you would agree Kittle. If you're going to spend up, I don't like to spend up on tight end, but if you're going to spend up, doesn't Kittle feel like the way to go?
Kittle does, and I'm a huge McBride fan, but Kittle's kind of where you start to get that inflection point where it's like, do I take an elite quarterback here, in the 4th round, or do I go and take a chance on Kittle and just secure an elite tight end? And Kittle had more points per game last year than McBride and Bowers. I think he was number 1 on a points per game basis, but he seems to be getting forgotten about. And I look at these matchups for these guys at the end of the season. And I know we talked about with CMC, but again, I mean, we're looking at the Panthers, the Browns, the Titans, the Colts, and the Bears. I mean, it's just so juicy. Like I just need some sort of exposure to this offense. I'm like you. I don't pay up for the tight end position. Once Kittle goes, I'm generally looking at the tight ends once we get to that Evan Ingram, Njoku, Tucker Kraft range. But if I am going to spend up, it's not on Bowers, it's not on McBride. It is Kittle, and that's what it's been for me in early drafts so far.
Well, Ingram's interesting too. I mean, if Ingram is playing this Joker role, and who else is there? It's Cortland Sutton, and no one else is established.
Yeah,
I mean, he and Njoku are interesting, but he's in a better offense. So would you rather have Njoku or Ingram?
I'd rather have Ingram. Similar to your point, I mean, I think it's telling that, we talk about the Sean Payton thing and the whole Joker role. And when Ingram was deciding between the Chargers and Denver, which I'm pretty sure reports said by Mike Kliss that the contracts were almost identical. But he chose Denver, and then he tweeted out the gif of the Joker. I think Sean Payton sold Ingram on his usage and how he's going to utilize him in the offense. And an interesting tidbit here, Njoku, Kelsey, Kittle, Hawkinson, and Evan Ingram, they're the only 5 tight ends in the last 3 years, and all 5 of them are those guys that have averaged 90 targets or more on this each. If you take their 3 seasons, they've averaged 90 targets a season over that span. So we're going to get volume either way. But to your point, I think Evan Ingram's got the better quarterback, better situation. Maybe Njoku's playing from behind more, so maybe that's better game script. I don't know, but I'm taking Ingram for sure.
Yeah, oftentimes the schedule at the end of the season can be overvalued, especially when it's weak teams. It's like, okay, if I have a great defense and a good offense, then sometimes all that leads to is just me running the ball, and we don't get the fireworks on offense that you might think. The 49ers are going to let the Browns and the Panthers score. Like, those could be shootouts because the 49ers defense is so weak now. That's what makes those matchups particularly juicy. It's not just about who they're playing. It's about their own defense. And so, again, if this was a team like the Chargers, a team like Kansas City goes and plays Carolina, it's not that great. That's not like a big boon for Patrick Mahomes. That just could be a bunch of Pacheco. But when it's San Francisco, everyone's going to have to get involved because they're going to have to score a lot of points to try to win.
Well, the one thing I'll say about San Francisco, I do think their defense could be a little bit better than people expect. Right, Warner had the injury last year. Now they lost Hufanga, but he didn't play the entire year. Obviously, Dre Greenlaw leaves, but those guys, they weren't impacting the defense anyway. And they get Robert Saleh back. So I think it could be interesting. They also did draft in the trenches. I worry more about the secondary than anything, which if we're talking shootouts and we're talking teams throwing the football, that could be a weakness where we saw that last year too, but they did draft in the trenches. So I think they're going to be a tougher team to run against, but I think passing wise, I do think they're going to be a team that gets a little bit exposed on that side of the football.
It's funny you said Robert Saleh. You mentioned it like he's back as if he's a key player. Robert Saleh's back. Oh my God, he's gonna make so many plays. Well, what number is he again? What number?
He's bald. I couldn't tell you what number he played. We're in college, but
he doesn't have a number.
Well, hey, actually, weirdly enough, baseball coaches have numbers, but football coaches don't. I don't know why that didn't translate over to this sport, but yeah, I don't know. Saleh's interesting. I know he doesn't play for the team, but I mean, there was some pretty egregious play calling on that side of the football, even special teams too. It was an entire mess outside of Shanahan. So we'll see. I don't expect them to be a top 10 unit for sure, but I expect them to be a little bit better than they were last year.
We'll see. What do you expect from Seattle in that division?
Ironically, I don't know what to think of Seattle. It's such a tough team to gauge because Kubiak coming in is super intriguing, right? I thought it was weird. Ryan Grubb came in. Everyone was super excited. We're like, they're going to pass the football a ton. Look what he did at Washington. It's going to be a super exciting offense. And then they were just an absolute mess where tons of fumbles. Geno, I mean, they just were very sloppy, and on an EPA standpoint, they were at the bottom of the league from an offensive perspective. Now it's interesting because Darnold worries me the most. That offensive line is a little bit better than it once was, and I trust Kubiak to maybe cover up for some of those ailments that they have. But I do have a little bit of pause. Darnold could really, really hurt us. So I just don't know what guy we're going to get.
Yeah, Darnold did well when he was protected throwing to Justin Jefferson. We'll see when the scenario is a little bit different. Yeah. And we'll see how the Seattle offensive line, the one thing that's encouraging is that we know they're going to do more 2 tight end sets, 2 wide receiver sets, also known as 12 personnel. And they're probably going to focus more on Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Kenneth Walker, but also Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is not dust. He's been injured. He's had the tightrope procedure. We know that he's had the re-injury. I don't think that ligament in his ankle has been removed. I think that it is healing, and I think it's a strong possibility that he goes out and he's finally healthy for a full season. Is he one of the more injury-prone wide receivers? Yeah, but so is McCaffrey. And who among the wide receivers has shown Christian McCaffrey level upside in the last 5 years? No one more than Cooper Kupp. So, yes, understand that there's a very high probability this guy misses games with injury, and draft him. That's my recommendation because, again, it's a consolidated target distribution. And of these players, I don't think the offense is going to be that prolific. Makes it hard for me to push the button on Jackson Smith-Njigba. The offense is just not prolific enough to justify it, especially with the addition of Cooper Kupp. So what do? Well, what you do with, below average offenses is you focus on the lesser expensive players. And if you can get Kenneth Walker outside the top 50, and he does leak outside the top 50 in some formats, then I say push the button on him, and certainly Cooper Kupp.
So I'm more in on Walker than I am on Kupp. Walker is frustrating. I feel like my brain melted when I saw he got hurt and has that ankle injury. Again, I was all in on his value.
But it's not an oblique. At least it's not an oblique.
I know, but I was all in on his cost. I mean, as you said, right, a guy that was going outside of the top 45, and I just the injury thing already concerns me. Now, I do think it's interesting. I don't know if you realize this, but I mean, Seattle's offensive line had a lot of injuries and all that, but they also had Connor Williams retire mid-season, who was their starting center and played every single snap at center last year, which may have led to some of the deficiencies on the offense. I mean, I think he retired like 2 games or 2 days before their rematch that they had. I think it was against who was it? I don't remember who it was. It was like right by week 9. So that was kind of weird, and I think that probably played a part. It's your center, but with Walker, if he's on the field, I'm very excited to own him. It's a matter of when he's on the field that concerns me the most. I find myself taking a chance on Alvin Kamara, who goes just a couple spots behind him, and even making me dipping into RJ Harvey a little bit. Maybe there's some bias there from me, but I'm a big Harvey guy, and those guys come at a little bit of a cheaper cost.
As you should be. When you're on the Flex 4 game in particular, it's crazy right now because I just can't believe this. Because Denver signed J.K. Dobbins, fast drafters have decided they're not going to draft R.J. Harvey in the 6th round anymore. That the 6th round expires and there's no R.J. Wow, because of Dobbins. Like, we deal with this every year. There's a bunch of players that people are worried about. Why are you worried about this guy? Oh, because of Dusty Player X. Yeah, but what about Dusty Player X? What about but what about Mike Williams? Or but what about what? I'm scared of this player. Oh, but they added this player that's going to retire at some point this year. It's like, why do we care? Why all of a sudden because the coach said that they're excited about the player? The coach said they liked what they saw? Right? Of course they're going to say that. Of course they're going to say that about J.K. Dobbins. The guy was just begging any team for a job, and I think he will be more healthy this year than he was last year. I think it's a process to come back from such devastating lower body injuries. But come on, man, that's not going to get me off R.J. Harvey, and I still think that's one of the best moves you can do in the Flex 4 game in particular is to focus on running back, right? And I was doing a lot of these mock drafts on the Flex 4 this weekend, And again, all these running backs I'm able to draft, but then sprinkle in some wide receivers, and wide receivers like to sprinkle Garrett Wilson, a great wide receiver to sprinkle in. Drake London, he could be the number one wide receiver in fantasy. You talked about Nico Collins could be the number one wide. So who could potentially be the number one wide receiver in fantasy? That guy is a good guy to sprinkle in. I mean, the Jets have already talked about that he's in line for being the team record receptions and targets. Duh. I'm not worried about whoever the hell they added and whatever. No, it's all about Garrett Wilson. And we'll talk about the Jets a little bit more in a minute. But I just think it's funny. A guy like R.J. Harvey, this is the Camara role that we've been waiting for with Sean Payton, and now that would get you off it. Like that's the J.K. Dobbins is going to get you off it. And is he even going to make the team?
Here's the thing. I think it was expected that they were going to bring in somebody, right? I mean, look who's behind RJ Harvey. It's Audric Estime, who a lot of people fell in love with. They did not love him in that. Audric Estime was a healthy scratch in the playoff game for Tyler Bidet, who came off like a pretty bad injury and was like a few weeks removed from the pup, right? So like they needed depth in that room, right? I'd be more worried about Joe Mixon, who I'm not even in love with Nick Chubb, the player, but he's an established veteran who does similar things aside from catching the football, is an early down back. Like I'm more worried about Mixon and them adding Chubb than I would be with Dobbins being added to Harvey's room. And and at the end of the day, you remember that they let Dobbins walk, who was cheaper. The escalators in Najee's contract go higher with incentives. They drafted a first-round running back and brought in Najee Harris while letting Dobbins walk, who had over 1,000 all-purpose yards last year and would have been cheaper, and they still let him walk. So that should tell you what you need to know. Dobbins is going to be a guy that may vulture a few touchdowns here and there, but I mean, it should not sway you from not taking RJ Harvey, and I'll take his discount all day, which we already talked about Flex 4. I mean, sometimes he's going undrafted.
A lot of times he's going undrafted. It's quite. Yeah. I'll look at the most recent draft, and I'll tell you if he was even drafted in round 6. I mean, my favorite drafts are the drafts where you go Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey to close it out. Yeah. He did not get drafted again. Joe Mixon got drafted, of course. Yep. Zay Flowers gets drafted, of course. But no RJ Harvey. James Conner, of course. Caleb Johnson. But no RJ Harvey. Jamison Williams. Okay. Like Chris Godwin. What is the upside with Chris Godwin? I don't get it. Like, I understand Rome Odunze. Like, I understand Ted McMillan. Like, these are guys with real upside. I understand, right? I understand. I didn't see any Jauan Jennings in the last 6th round of the Flex 4 game. So again, very exploitable. Hampton, Henderson, and Harvey still very attainable. You could actually, there are drafts where you could go boom, 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 Hampton, Henderson, Harvey. You could have your entire second half of your draft. You can close it out. Hampton, Henderson, Harvey. Check your mic settings. Did your mic settings get changed? Let's just check your mic settings real quick. Make sure that it's set on the right mic.
Yeah. I think I'm good, right?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the little mic came up, and I was like, so all good.
So now, let's I think it's we've alluded to this Los Angeles Chargers situation. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Everyone loves Hampton. The coaches love Hampton. Like old school, old-fashioned coaches that don't want to give rookies and rookie camp any praise, right? They want to make sure they're working hard. They want to, make them earn the podium time. But somehow Hampton is he's already won these guys over. in Los Angeles. That's pretty exciting.
It is. It's very rare that we see a first round running back like not perform year one. And Najee Harris is on a 1 year deal. Again, I think Najee is a guy that he'll get some touches. I'm not going to sit here and tell you not, but this is a team that wants to run the football. I think they're telling you that by what their actions are, and that's partially why they drafted Trey Harris, in my opinion, who played in an offense that predominantly ran a ton of play action with Jackson Dart, right? So I think that they're telling you that they're going to continue to run the football. And I like Omar and Hampton. I can't say that I have a ton of exposure to him. It's not necessarily that I'm fading him. It's just a matter of like how drafts have fallen to me. But yeah, I mean, I think Hampton is a guy that could get to RB12 on the year as a finish from a fantasy points perspective. There's a world where that happens, and right now, yeah, he's being drafted in ADP somewhere around like between the 40s and 50s right now, and as you said, third round, fourth round pick in fast drafts at the moment.
Yeah. So the Hampton upside, things break his way. I mean, it's the moon. Like that's why I love Hampton so much. What about the passing game? So if they're going to be very run focused, it's going to be a good offense regardless. It's going to be a very efficient offense.
Sure.
So where are you with Herbert, Ladd McConkey? McConkey and Garrett Wilson feel like really, really attractive players. Like even if the volume isn't there, they're so locked in as the singular destination for footballs in the passing game that it's just I have to you have to think about those could be your 1 and 2 in the league in target share, those two players.
Yeah, I mean, when I at least when we talk about, let's talk about Ladd first. 112 targets last year. Now Joshua Palmer's gone. That's 65 vacated targets right there. Will Dissly had 64 targets last year. Demario Davis. I mean, you have a bunch of no names that got targets. J.K. Dobbins got 38 last year. I think there's a world that, and, oh, by the way, Quentin Johnson, 91. I don't expect Quentin Johnson to eclipse 1,000. I think Ladd's targets, he's going to fall somewhere around like 130, in my opinion. I think that goes up even a little bit more, even with Trey Harris, who I happen to like. But I think that run game should open things up for Ladd as well. And Trey Harris can stretch the field, right? And Quentin Johnson can be that guy on the outside where he's opening and helping out Ladd. So I like Ladd. I find myself drafting him. I know. I'll save the next part for later. But I was going to talk about somebody else that's going around Ladd. But yeah, I like
Drake London.
Yeah, so if you're
Who do you
telling me
prefer?
like,
Would you rather have London or Ladd McConkey?
yeah, I was gonna say I prefer London.
Yes.
I mean, game script wise, that Atlanta defense stinks, and they play in a dome. It's a terrible, terrible defense. They play in a dome. Saints play in a dome, so they get to play 2 games there. Tampa Bay plays in good weather. Carolina's good weather. So dome games plus in division games have domes plus good weather. So all that's factored in. And then on top of the fact that you also have a really bad defense. I expect them to, and I like Darnell Mooney, but outside of Mooney and London, there's not really a dominant guy that's going to take target share away. I don't expect Kyle Pitts to become good again after his rookie year. I'm just not. So yeah, I prefer London over Ladd.
It's interesting when you look at Ladd McConkey, you look at Drake London, you look at Garrett Wilson. They could be you again. Ball 3 could be top 5 in target share. And yet, Brian Thomas goes ahead of all of them. And Brian Thomas does not have a quarterback that's ever been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And Brian Thomas just received top 5 wide receiver draft pick, right? Top 5 pick in the NFL draft, Travis Hunter. And yet he's still a first-round pick or, early second round. Either way, always going before London, always going before Wilson, always going before McConkey. How do you feel about Brian Thomas and his ability to deliver at ADP? Hunter, Where is he going? Trevor Lawrence, do you think they're going to resuscitate him? Do you think this is going to be the year of Trevor Lawrence? What do you think is going to happen in Jacksonville?
I think Jacksonville. The biggest concern for me is what does that offensive line look like this year? Offensive line was pretty bad last year. Play calling was bad. They fixed the play calling by bringing in Liam Cohen. I think that's
what
that's
number is Cohen? Where does he play?
Well, play calling matters, man. Play calling matters.
I know it does. I'm just saying, like the short of adding actual offensive linemen, yes, that is also good.
Well, here's the thing. This is a sidebar, but I am interested to see how Baker performs now getting his third offensive coordinator, right? We said it was Canales. He revived Baker. Then he goes over to work with Bryce Young. Now it's Liam Cohen. Look what he did with Baker. Now he's going to help Trevor Lawrence. Like, is there a world where maybe Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback than we've given him credit for too?
Better than Trevor Lawrence. He's had a better fantasy season last year than Trevor Lawrence has even come close to.
His peak is higher than Lawrence's even came close to, in my opinion, in the NFL.
Yeah. So yeah, Baker Mayfield's been a great value in Dynasty. I think I talked about it on a recent show. In Superflex and 2QB Dynasty leagues, I am, for the first time in a long time, just ignoring quarterback in the first 2 rounds, going for a stack of like in a dream world, like Bijan, Drake London to start, something like that. Sure. And then going for a Brock Purdy, a Michael Penix, a JJ McCarthy, trying to get maybe 2 of those guys, and then a third, like a Bryce Young or a Justin Fields to round it out. I really like those Superflex and 2QB rosters where I don't go quarterback in rounds 1 and 2, because of who is available this year for whatever reason. For whatever reason, Purdy's still undervalued, JJ McCarthy's undervalued, Penix undervalued, and it's a lot of it's all for the same reasons that they would have been the 101 this year, both Penix and, well, had Penix stayed in for one more year, then all of a sudden then he's very old. Then the argument for Cam Ward would have been that Penix is too old, where McCarthy didn't have that problem. But regardless, we have small samples or no samples, and there hasn't been enough football to judge a couple of these quarterbacks. Another guy was Mr. Irrelevant, and that's still lingering. Another guy in Justin Fields, we'll talk about in a minute. He's bounced around the league, even though we know he has 1,000 rushing yards in a season in his range of outcomes. So, again, there's just a lot of opportunity to get quarterbacks. Again, Baker Mayfield is in there. Baker Mayfield is another guy that you could now, I think, confidently draft in Superflex and 2QB leagues and say, hey, this is a cornerstone quarterback for me. I don't have that level of confidence in a Trevor Lawrence, and you always have to pay, like, the sex tax. There's always this sexy 101 tax on players, and sometimes it's well justified. With Joe Burrow, that tax has always been well justified. Lawrence, not so much.
Yeah, the interesting thing, quarterback is one of those positions for me in Dynasty that I try not to put too much value on age, because these guys are aging better and better, especially the guys that are good pure passers. And Baker is a good pure passer. Like, he's 30 years old, but if you started, like you're saying, if you started a draft out where you got 2 elite cornerstone players, were able to get Baker in the 3rd, and then maybe turn around and roll the dice with Fields, and then try to take a chance on Stafford like a few rounds later, just in case.
There's another one.
Fields, right? Like, then you take Stafford, who could give you like a stopgap for like a few, like, so I think we get so like worked up over the age of some of these quarterbacks. Like, I would take Kyler Murray. I mean, I would take Baker Mayfield in a plus in Dynasty over Kyler. Like, and I know in Player Profiler we have Baker, ranked behind Kyler, and a lot of that factors in the age. But I would take Baker over Kyler if I could get something added on top. I mean,
yeah, I didn't mention Kyler in any of these scenarios. Not a guy I'm targeting at all. What about Marvin Harrison? So Kyler Murray's not even number one target, right? His number two target goes very early in drafts, right? So you have a lot of these mobile quarterbacks. Their receivers suffer and are generally overvalued, whether it be Zay Flowers, whoever it is. For some reason, even though Trey McBride is the clear number one option and he's not going anywhere,
No.
and Kyler Murray's not getting any better at throwing the ball or accurately to the outside, or agreeing to push the ball downfield when more often. Either way, I don't see the case for Marvin Harrison Jr. If things had changed in some way, give me something. Even fucking offensive coordinators that don't wear jerseys.
Well,
right?
That
Even guys holding clipboards with no number, no jersey, no nothing, that don't play. Give me something. Give me some reason that someone thinks things are going to change, and then we can talk. But it seems so static in Arizona, and it's like, I know what's going to happen already. I can close my eyes and I can see these games playing out in my head very easily. And I don't know what the hell people are thinking, pushing him up into the third round, second round now in best ball. Like, what? What?
At that cost, I'm not in on Marv. I do think, and I did say this a few weeks back on the Fast Draft channel, that Marv actually didn't have a bad year. We just severely overdrafted him, like severely overdrafted him. I mean, 116 targets, 62 receptions, 885, and 8 touchdowns. Really is not a bad year for a rookie. I mean, it's in line with guys like CeeDee Lamb. I just think we drafted Marv at the 1-2 turn, and we're getting so jazzed up that he burned you. He did not return the equity that you put into him last year. Now, would I draft him over Alvin Kamara? No. Would I draft him over Devontae Adams? No. I prefer Devontae Adams too. Those are two guys that he's sandwiched in between currently, and I'd rather take chances on both of those guys. Because like you said, nothing's really changed. And the problem that I have with the Cardinals is they do not scheme up easy plays for him. Now, that could change. It's only 1 year, and they did bring their OC back, and maybe he's learned. I'm not going to buy into that. I think it's Petzik or whatever the heck his name is. They don't scheme up anything easy for Marv, and it's super infuriating to watch. So, I mean, McBride is the guy that I want there, but I don't even want McBride at his cost either. James Conner. Give me some James Conner. If I'm going to take one guy in this offense who I think his cost makes sense, it's probably McBride. Now, if Marv, you're telling me, slips into that 4th round range, maybe there's a world where I take him over like maybe Terry, who I think is going to come. There's going to be some regression for him. But again, it's going to depend who's on the board. But you don't think Terry's going to regress at all?
No, I think that basically what you're with Marv, you're chasing Terry McLaurin, but you already have Terry McLaurin. This is another thing. Like, I don't accept getting pushed off of players because dusty veterans no one wanted happened to sign there. And stop telling me J.K. Dobbins matters. Enough.
No.
Like, I'm so sick of it. And also I'm so sick of projecting production onto players that have never done it in hopes of getting what I already have. Like, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. I already have McLaurin, and essentially with the role that you're imagining for Marvin Harrison Jr., not you, but the collective, the role the collective is imagining could happen and would unlock him, is what you're getting already with Terry McLaurin and his mobile quarterback. He has a better mobile quarterback. Everything is better in Terry McLaurin's situation than Marvin Harrison's situation. These are very talented players. They both went to Ohio State. I mean, there's just not a lot of difference. There's not a lot of distance between these two. There's not a lot of daylight when you're just comparing their profiles. It's just that one guy happened to do it year over year, especially last year, in the situation that he's going to be in this year. So I've seen it, and therefore I can print it. Whereas Marvin Harrison, I haven't seen it. And then you're telling me, wait, the guy that I have seen it goes after the guy I haven't seen it, and then I throw my papers in the air.
So let me ask you this then, right? Terry McLaurin right now in best ball ADP, he's about somewhere around 30, right? So you're talking high end third round, middle third round. Devontae Adams, a couple picks behind him. Who are you taking?
Devontae Adams.
Okay.
Devontae Adams is a smash this year. I mean, this is not a Devontae Adams conversation. Yeah. It should be, but it isn't. I wish it was. I wish he was on the show sheet. He's not, and the show sheet is not my boss. I put the show sheet together very quickly, and we can easily pivot to a player that it's just because I'm not drafting any Puca Nacua. He is overrated. Well inside the first round. Get out of here. They added Devontae Adams. And it's as if they didn't do it. The ADP didn't change. I was like, wait a second. He should have dropped into the second round. And so Puca being drafted where he is makes no sense to me. It's even more nonsensical than a guy like Brian Thomas having added the target competition, knowing you can get these receivers that we talked about that I prefer, the Drake London group, that tier, a round and a half later. Silliness. It's absolute silliness. So I've made my decision. It's all in on Devontae Adams. These two are equivalent talents. Devontae Adams has done it longer, is a Hall of Famer. Puca wants to be him. Why not just draft the guy that's done it and is it that we? It's confusing. It's confused. The ADP differential between Puca and Devontae Adams is confusing.
Yeah, with Adams too. If there's a world where Puca has not been healthy, Adams has been. Yeah, he missed 3 games because he had the hamstring injury with the Raiders before he came over to the Jets. But this is a guy in Adams who 2023, 17 games, 2022, 17 games, 16 in 2021. Like, he's been healthy. He's been healthy, and Puca hasn't. If Puca goes down, there's a world if Puca Nacua was not there, like if he did miss time, Adams could give you top 5 production, in my honest opinion, if Puca were to get hurt, which is possible. We've seen it happen. Devontae Adams also on a points per game basis outside of 2023 where he had Jimmy Garoppolo, Gardner Minshew throwing in the football, he's been inside the top 9 every single season aside from 2017. So I love Devontae Adams. And the craziest thing about Adams that I don't understand about the ADP for him, this is a guy who got a better situation, and he's being drafted later than he was last year. He was being drafted higher last year. But Puca Nacua's concern about him is what's driving his price down. And I don't agree with it.
I'll never draft players this old ever again. I think this is the year, this is the high watermark for my average age of player. Think about the players that I'm in on, and I think you are too. McCaffrey, 29. Devontae Adams, early 30s. Cooper Kupp, early 30s. These are a lot of these are just arbitrage plays, straight up arbitrage plays where I'm not drafting much at all of the number one ahead of these guys, even though the guys I'm drafting, the veterans, are more established Hall of Fame players. And all we're saying is, yes, we know that especially a guy like Cooper Kupp and Christian McCaffrey, they have a higher injury probability, but the upside is clear and defined. We've seen it. We haven't seen it yet with Marvin Harrison Jr. And so I'm willing to take the risk that there is a cliff year coming. I just happen to think the cliff year for Devontae Adams is next year. I think the cliff year for Cooper Kupp is next year. I don't know when the cliff year is for Christian McCaffrey. It's next year or the year after that. But I think if there was a year to be all in on old players, I think this is the year, especially if they can stay healthy during training camp.
Yeah, I'm with you. The last thing I'll say on Adams is I think about McVay and Matt Stafford, who I think Matt Stafford is the best quarterback in the NFC. I truly believe that right now Matt Stafford is the best quarterback. Now you're giving Devontae Adams the best quarterback he's had since Rodgers, and we're gonna fade him at the cheapest cost we've gotten him in years because he's 32. I've seen no signs of slowing down. If you're worried that he could get injured and miss time, fine. But I'm not worried that his skill set is slowing down. That guy, I mean, the way he works on his craft, like he's just so good. And I mean, 141 targets last year, 175, 180, 169. I mean, the targets are there. And even if Puka's there, Puka could get 130 targets. Like there's a world where Cup and Puka last year had over 100 targets in 11 and 12 games. They both had over 100 targets. Now imagine them in a 17-game season and now enter Devontae Adams, who's better than both of them, in my opinion. I think Puka's good. I understand your point on maybe his cost is a little too high,
Yeah,
but I think he's a good player. But I think
sure.
Devontae Adams, even at this age right now, is a better football player than Puka Nacua and what Cooper Kupp was last year and will be this year. So again, Stafford's getting the best wide receiver he's had since Kupp was Kupp a couple years ago.
Silliness. It's absolute silliness. And you did mention the Cardinals. It's one of my stay away teams. It's one of my stay away teams. And you want to go down to James Conner. That's when you start getting excited to draft Cardinals. I go even later. The Cardinal I'm drafting is Trey Benson. That's really where I start drafting Cardinals, is at Trey Benson. And there's always going to be several second-year running backs that break out. It happens every year like clockwork. Trey Benson, he's interesting. There's a bunch of guys that are interesting, right? Marshawn Lloyd, he's healthy. There's no one behind Josh Jacobs to really challenge Marshawn Lloyd.
Sure.
Of all the options, when you think about the second-year running backs, because last year's running back class was underwhelming, but they are going to get opportunities this year. Who do you like?
I like Blake Corum. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think Trey Benson is. I think Trey Benson is my guy too. I like James Conner. James Conner is kind of like the last girl in the bar who you take her home with you, and you're getting lucky. So it's cool. Like you get to go home with the girl, and it ends up being actually a pretty good night, and you have to end up actually being pretty surprised. That's kind of James Conner every year. that's kind of James Conner every year. But I can understand the concern that there is. I mean, there's a world. He's getting older. He looks as good as ever, but there is a world where he is getting older. And so, yeah, I'm definitely interested in Trey Benson. I mean, last year's running backs, there really was a lot to be desired in that class. Marshawn Lloyd's interesting, I would say, too. Jacobs had some of that health concerns a couple of years back, and they do like to run the football a ton. So maybe I haven't really put too much thought into Lloyd this year, but he could be a handcuff that might be worth taking a look at. So maybe you're kind of raising my wires a little bit on him, because I haven't really put too much thought into Lloyd just because Jacobs was so good last year.
He's an athlete. 820 yards and only 116 carries at USC, because he's one of these guys that transferred, and his career had disjointed in college. So goes to the combine, shreds the combine, then has several injuries. He had appendicitis. It's just one of those lost seasons, right? Anytime a guy has to have his appendix out, probably deserves the benefit of the doubt and a second chance to impress the following year. So there's another deep handcuff that I like. Best ball, Dynasty, that's a guy I like. Jaden Higgins is surging because of the coach speak that he clearly outplayed Jalen Noel. And then it's wide open. It's wide open behind Nico Collins. So how high is too high to draft this guy, especially in seasonal leagues?
Well, when you take a look at Jaden Higgins, he's actually being drafted inside the top 100 currently. Now, this is best ball ADP, so keeping in mind that in the formats that I'm looking at, you draft three receivers to start. So receivers ADPs get pushed up a little bit sometimes. But Jaden Higgins overall, he goes around guys like Michael Pittman Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Cooper Kupp, right? He's going behind some of those guys. And there's a world where maybe they throw the football a little bit more. I guess my concern is I might want to take a chance on Noel, who I think Noel and Kirk are more appetizing than Higgins, who I love. I mean, you can rewind the tape on Player Profiler. Like Jada Higgins was a guy that I said was my fifth ranked wide receiver in this class before the draft. But I think he can be productive. I just worry about the pace of play on that offense, defensive minded head coach, how many opportunities. The good thing is Nico Collins does get injured, and so does Christian Kirk, which could open up more opportunities. But I think I'd rather take a chance maybe on Jalen Noel or Kirk. And this is coming from a guy who really likes Higgins, but just inside the top 100 might be a little too spicy for me.
This is why you're good at this, man. This is why you're good at this. You're not letting your dynasty takes override your seasonal league takes. That's the value is on a guy like Christian Kirk. That's where the value is. It's gross, but that's what it is. They brought him in to play the slot. He's going to get volume. You just have to eat that, especially in his first year with the team. That's what they're going to do, and I'm not sorry. That's just we're trying to win fantasy leagues. We're not trying to build a team that feels the most fun. We're trying to actually win, and that's what you have to do. If you have is sometimes fade a player just because the cost isn't right, and you're going to draft Cooper Kupp, and it doesn't feel great, but the odds that Jaden Higgins outproduces Cooper Kupp, it's going to require an injury, and I don't like betting on an injury unless I know the guy is going to miss time or is already injured. So, yes, Ayuk, he's not going to play, and he's probably not going to be 100% for many weeks after he's activated, and I don't want anything to do with him. Cooper Kupp, as far as I know, he's one of the few guys that didn't show up with an injury right in camp. He's good to go.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Let's go, buddy.
But you talked about Kirk though, and this offense with Higgins. I think when you look at Kirk too, he's stepping into that in-breaking kind of route role with Stephon Diggs, and Diggs averaged 15 points per game in that role. And I think, ironically enough, if you go to Player Profiler and you look at Stephon Diggs, Christian Kirk is the most comparable player to him. Which I didn't realize until I was putting some stuff together a few months ago, and I had just saw, and I was like, this is so weird. Now Stephon Diggs much better player, but coming out from a prospect standpoint, right? Very similar skill sets. But I did find it interesting that when you look at the yards per route run, last year Diggs was 1.84. Christian Kirk's yards per route run was 1.71. So they were both utilized very similar underneath with the in-breaking routes, and he could step into that role. It's just a matter of health with Christian Kirk, though. That's can he stay healthy? That's the concern.
The Player Profiler comparables are spooky sometimes. They are spooky, and sometimes you just have to wait. Sometimes you wait 10 years. You wait long enough, run out the clock, and then the comps will come to fruition. It will materialize. Watch it happen right there. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether anyone likes that or not. I was just in Pittsburgh at a wedding, and I was at a flea market, and I was at a place where they were selling all kinds of discounted Steeler gear. Like you could get the Pickens shirt for $3, right? It was pretty funny, right? It's pretty funny. Najee Harris jersey, but they had all the new stuff. The Metcalf, Rodgers was already out there everywhere. Didn't see any Caleb Johnson, right? Didn't see, and I asked the clerk. I was like, "Do you have any Caleb Johnson stuff?" And he was like, "Who's that?" I was like, "Caleb Johnson, the superstar running back who's gonna be like a Pittsburgh Steeler legend in the next couple of years, that guy, You guys are, really eager to get rid of all these DK Metcalf overstock, and light your Pickens shirts on. A lot of a lot of obsolete gear in this place with the Steelers. Just a lot of obsolete stuff in Pittsburgh in general.
Well, that's the Yinzers out there, man. That's
the poor Yinzers, man. They're really they hate Tomlin. So they like all the wrong guys. They hate all the wrong guys. It's the problem when the front office starts to really flail. The effects reverberate across the entire franchise. I feel bad. For them.
Well, do they love Rodgers or do they hate Rodgers? And is that the right guy to love or the wrong guy to love?
They hate Rodgers. They're finally the Steelers for the first time. The fan base I've noticed, typically they're drinking whatever happened last year. They have these seasons where they have a negative point differential and they make the playoffs, and that's good for them. They're happy. They believe they deserve to be there. It's one of the many delusional fan bases out there, and they've been getting very lucky year over year with their outcomes. But this year, for some reason, it's all come crashing down. The morale is at rock bottom. There's already like Fire Tomlin shirts being printed. Like, it's all happening. Like, they hate Rodgers already. He hasn't taken a snap yet. So I love it. I'm like, oh my God, this is what you need. This is what you people needed this so much. You needed this. You needed to come to Jesus, and they're coming to Jesus. But I'm like, you have a guy to get excited about, and you're so angry and bitter that you're missing something to actually get excited about. Like, I'm typically the one that's trying to deliver the bad news to the Steeler fan, and here is the opposite. I was like, no, you guys, there's some things to be excited about. Like, sure. Caleb Johnson's awesome. Who's that? Right? So anyway, I think that it's going to be fun to see Steeler fans and the Steeler community really embrace Caleb Johnson over the next few months. It's going to happen.
Well, I did see somebody in the chat said that Rodgers, by the way, and then we'll get into Caleb, Rodgers did beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl. So maybe there's some bitter feelings there. Maybe that's why they don't love him, and it might take a little bit of time to come around on him.
There's a lot of reasons people don't like Rodgers.
Well, yeah. Rodgers, the football player, Aaron Rodgers, I think he's still got it. Now, that might be a hot take for some reason. I don't think people really watched him play last year down the stretch. He came off an Achilles injury. Like, can we not assume that a guy at age, maybe the beginning of the year, still kind of trying to get right? Like, is that not a possibility? That our offensive line was terrible. Nathaniel Hackett didn't even know that he was allowed to throw the football to Breece Hall, who ran 400 routes last year. So yeah, I think there's a world where Rodgers might not be washed. Now, Caleb Johnson, this is where we're going to kind of Caleb Johnson was a top 5 guy in the pre-draft process for me. I liked Caleb Johnson. My concern with Johnson is if Rodgers doesn't, from a dynasty perspective, are they back on the quarterback carousel after this year? If Rodgers is now gone, right? We've seen Najee Harris where, well, let me ask you, who do you think is a better prospect coming out of college, Najee or Caleb Johnson?
Caleb Johnson.
You think Caleb? Because Najee was
drafted because he was an Alabama player. If Najee Harris went to Iowa, he would have been a 3rd round pick. We all know it.
All right. Well,
okay. So that's the bottom line is we all knew it. He was way overdrafted. It was gross.
He was overdrafted.
It was so gross. We all knew it at the time. And what are you going to do? It was such a Pittsburgh Steeler move. But the Steelers have been doing the Steelers for so many years that eventually they're going to be a last place team and they're going to rebuild in spite of themselves. Caleb Johnson is not someone I'm that excited to draft in Dynasty because I think that the situation that he's in, he's going to be fed a lot of empty calorie carries and touches. The touchdown equity is not there. I don't feel the need to draft Caleb Johnson in a rookie draft because I know I can trade for him later. He is eventually going to do right by the Steelers. They just don't
Sure.
know it yet. But for fantasy, I don't see a lot to like with this Pittsburgh Steelers team. I was talking about maybe in best ball when you draft 3 tight ends. Freiermuth is interesting as a super fringy, super late round receiver. Calvin Austin's interesting. Actually, in the Flex 4 game on Fast Draft in the 6th round, DK Metcalf, because there's no stacking with the Flex 4 game, then DK Metcalf becomes interesting. So
Sure.
there are certain players in certain games, like, okay, is it a 20-round best ball? Okay, now maybe I'm interested in Calvin Austin. Okay, I'm in a certain build. Okay, maybe I'll be interested in Freiermuth. Okay, on Fast Draft Flex 4, okay, this is where I would draft DK Metcalf. But it's tough. It's just another one of those teams where I'm like, this is going to be a bottom 10 offense, and they're going to play slow, and I'm out.
Yeah, well, and that's when you look at Najee Harris's production over the last 3 years. I mean, he caught the ball, averaged 35 catches a season, right? Touched the ball over 250 times every single year the last 3 seasons, and he was at best 19th in points per game in 2022. Like you said, the volume will be there, but what about Kenneth Gainwell, who I don't think people are talking about? What about Jalen Warren, right? Like, Kenneth Gainwell could be a sneaky guy where he could get the passing work. And that's where it's a little tricky with Caleb Johnson, because he did come from an offense in college that, like, I don't think it had to do with him not being a good receiving back as much as it's Iowa. Like, how much do they throw to the running back position? So, but like, is Caleb Johnson going to be that guy on 3rd downs? I don't expect him to be. So there's some concern there. And then DK Metcalf. Now
the upside isn't there with Caleb Johnson. The upside is not there because he doesn't have the receiving equity and he doesn't have the TD equity, and that's where fantasy points are scored. And though he is a fun player, and like I said, he will eventually be a guy where people are wearing his jersey all over Pittsburgh.
Sure.
This year, he's not going to help your fantasy team much.
And that's where I give pushback when we get to the RJ Harvey versus Caleb Johnson. Who do you prefer?
Oh, I'm not easily Harvey. God, that's a thing?
I'm not worried about RJ Harvey, what I'm going to get in trade value for him in 4 or 5 years, which is why the age thing is really all that people care about in that argument with Harvey versus Caleb. And, I prefer Harvey over Caleb. That the system's better. I know that Nix is going to be there. I know Sean Payton's going to be there. Mike Tomlin's biggest downfall is he does not, like, he's loyal to a fault. Like, Arthur Smith, I think, is better than people give him credit for, but I don't think he's a good offensive coordinator. They stuck with Matt Canada. That offensive line's not that good. No. Rodgers is an upgrade. I think DK is the guy that I want if I'm getting anybody in this room. And like you said, maybe Freiermuth. I'm not even super high on DK, but no, at his cost, it's not terrible. No. And we do know Rodgers likes to funnel to his top target.
Yeah, that again, bad offense. There's a handful of scenarios where you can pick a guy at value in situations, in formats where it makes sense, and that's about it. Same conversation, right? It's a tough conversation to have. These guys are so talented, but it's the same conversation with Quinshon Judkins as you're having with Caleb Johnson. Sure. The reception equity and the TD equity is not there, and I'm just going to go ahead and draft these guys as late as possible, never get them. And then if I want them in Dynasty, I'll trade for them later when their value comes down after they underperform, because they're destined to underperform. How could they not? With the offensive lines and the offenses, Quinshon Judkins, their offensive line's even worse. They play a little faster, but it's like right?
They're going to commit to the run, the Browns, but okay.
Okay, you can't commit to the run when you're down 20. That's not how committing to the run works.
I don't think their defense is going to be that good.
The Chargers committing to the run actually is a threat It's a viable threat, but not
Sure.
the Browns committing to the run. That has no credibility. Now,
Absolutely.
DK Metcalf feels like a great fit with Aaron Rodgers because I know Rodgers loves the back shoulder, and that's the one route that DK Metcalf can run, right?
Yeah.
But generally
That is true.
speaking, DK Metcalf is a sloppy route runner, super imprecise, and that's something that Aaron Rodgers loathes. So I can't decide whether this is a fit or not. Tricky.
DK is tricky, and shout
Tricky.
out to my old partner Anthony Servino. He always said to me with DK last year, we're consistently chasing that sophomore season where DK had 1,300 yards, and was 10th in fantasy points per game. But since then, DK hasn't cracked inside the top 20, and so it just
Cracked.
feels like cracked. That's there you go. That's
Cracked.
honestly cracked might have been the better word there. He just like I feel like we look at DK and it's just he's this athletic freak, this specimen, and but he's not that good of a football player, actual wide receiver. He's not a guy that's going to go above the rim. He was at the bottom of the league for contested catch rate at the wide receiver position. I don't think he caught 20% of his contested catches. So he caught like 1 out of every 5. The good thing with Rodgers is that he can place the ball well enough, like you said, those back shoulders where only his guy can get it. So that should help DK. So I think DK is a volume play. DK is the kind of guy where it's like, if I'm trying to play safe, DK is a safe play. He's going to have the targets, and I think he's going to have the yards and the receptions. But how many touchdowns does he score? I don't think he has top 12 upside. I think 15 is maybe the ceiling for DK. And I mean, where you're getting him, maybe that's okay. But I try to look at other guys that go around him, and I think I'm trying to see. I didn't
Like a
have it pulled
Jauan
up here.
Jennings versus a DK Metcalf is interesting because a Jauan Jennings, he's not going to get the same target share as DK Metcalf, but he could get more targets and score more touchdowns, and he's just a way better player.
Sure.
So it's to
Well,
me,
what
it's
about
fascinating where
James
one guy's
Williams?
going earlier, and especially and the beauty of drafting a Jennings on Fast Draft is that his ownership is only like 15%.
Right.
So again, you get more leverage where the
That's
ownership
fair.
on DK Metcalf is up closer to like 75%.
Sure. Well, so like when you look at DK, right? He's pick 44 right now, wide receiver 25. I guess it's not a terrible spot to take him. He's like a mid 5th round pick, early 5th round pick. Like I guess that's not terrible, but I would take him over Travis Hunter. I would take him over Travis Hunter.
Take him over Godwin. Take him over
I would take.
Shakir. Take him over. Did you take him over Devontae Smith?
Ooh. Um,
Mm, tough one.
I think I would go with Devonta still. I think I'd still go with Smith.
I think the cutoff for me is McMillan. I'd much rather McMillan. McMillan's basically a player in a similar situation who's just better.
Yeah. I completely agree, and that I mean, it's actually similar because from a target share perspective,
Yeah.
Ted has maybe some more intriguing pieces at the wide receiver position around him, but overall, we should see massive target shares for both guys.
Yep.
And yeah, I would rather Tet too, pretty comfortably.
So one of the reasons why they're speculating that George Pickens was traded because that he wouldn't get along with Aaron Rodgers. Like this was like a preemptive trade to lure in Rodgers. Hey, listen, we're getting rid of the immature player, the guy that's too intense, the guy that's going to stare you down in the locker room and make you uncomfortable. Don't worry, Aaron. Come on in. We're building a nest for you, right? So they were nesting with Rodgers. Whereas, you have your Dak Prescott. You're like, I just got a much better weapon than we had before. I just got a huge upgrade. Thanks very much. I don't have the sensitivities that an Aaron Rodgers has. So what's your read on this on Pickens? Pickens, pretty polarizing player.
Some guys when it's early on in the season, as it is right now, I don't have a firm commitment to a guy. Pickens is really one of those players right now for me because I expect Dak Prescott to be good I really do. From a fantasy perspective, I expect him to be good. I think he's underrated. Does he come up in the big games? Yeah, sure. He does. He misses there, but that's not fantasy football. That's playoffs, and those things don't matter. But this running game's going to stink. I don't think the defense is going to be a top 10 unit, and they play in a dome, right? And they should throw the football a good amount because that running game stinks. So there is a world where Pickens in a contract year could surprise people and actually be pretty solid. He's being picked at wide receiver 29. I think there's a world where he cracks inside the top 20. I'm not worried about CeeDee Lamb at all, but there is some intrigue with Pickens for me. I don't have a firm commitment one way or the other on him at the moment.
Number 3 in explosive play rating on Player Profiler last year. 900 yards on just 103 targets. He doesn't have to have the huge target share to put up big numbers. I think that there's something there. He's certainly going to be a better offense than he's ever been in. I'm in on Pickens this year, but I think you're right. You don't need to be out over your skis on him. You can wait until camp starts and then maybe even into preseason, and then you can get a read on where he's at in the offense, where he's at in the pecking order. How does Dak feel about him? The coaches, what are they saying? What are the coaches? What is Dak saying? And try to read between the lines. And that's one of those players where I think you actually can glean a lot of interesting and actionable information. You don't have to be a hero over drafting him now. You can maybe dabble on him now. And then you can, later on in the summer, end of August, you could really dig in and get him on a lot of teams.
So with Pickens and now they have Schottenheimer there. So these are the Schottenheimer wide receiver twos since 2018. Doug Baldwin, he finished wide receiver 46. DK Metcalf in 2019 finished wide receiver 33. Tyler Lockett in 2020 was wide receiver 8 as the wide receiver 2 on his team. If depending on if you think DK was really the one or what have you. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 38, but that was 2023. Cooks still was not Cooks anymore. And then you have Jalen Tolbert last year, wide receiver 45, 2024.
Look at the division they're in.
He's better than probably all of them.
They're going to have to throw to compete with Washington and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And on their schedule, they're going to have to be active in the passing game. And you said it, they don't have a running game. They have Javonte Williams.
Yep.
So this is an environment for a wide receiver 2 on that team to thrive like we have not seen with Schottenheimer ever.
I agree. And I think it all falls on Dak, right? If Dak is Dak, who I think Dak is a guy that's going draft outside the top 12 and is going to be a value yet again.
There's another one. We talked about, hey, add Baker to the mix, add Stafford to the mix, add in 2QB and Superflex, Dynasty and seasonal leagues. This is not the year to spend up on quarterback.
No, and that's why I feel even the same way with tight ends, right? Like I feel so much better about my teams when I do draft so far early on. When I don't draft quarterback or tight end early, I end up loving my teams because there's so much upside in the quarterbacks beyond Mahomes and even Baker, right? When you start to get to the argument for Drake May, right? There's an argument for Dak Prescott, JJ McCarthy, right? And then the tight ends that we talked about before, like. I just find myself
Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth.
100%. And there's a world where all those guys are top 5, right? And there's a world where Dak Prescott could be top 10 this year. I mean,
and then what does that mean? That means you get to lean in to these like super sexy stacks, like Fields, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. I mean, there's no more consolidated offense in the NFL than those guys. Add Braylon Allen, right? So it's a rare offense where 3 of the top 4 fantasy producers are likely to provide the majority of their production on the ground. It's very interesting. They're going to be run heavy, but that doesn't mean you don't draft Garrett Wilson. It's just a fascinating team, and I think there's a lot of value there. And it may be my favorite team stack is just Jets.
Well, in the year 2025, somebody might look at you like you're drunk if you had said that maybe a year or two ago, because because it's the Jets, right? But
yeah,
I think the player that I'm most excited about is Brees Hall in this offense. I know you're high on Garrett Wilson. I like guys that go around Garrett. I think Garrett's is definitely a guy that will produce this year. I'm interested to see where his ceiling is. When you look at, I would rather, I go back and forth to JSN and Garrett, but you did point out before, that there is, JSN has to deal with possibly Cup there. I would take Garrett over Tyreek Hill. I would take Garrett I would probably take him over T. Higgins. I would take him over Terry.
Yes.
So I think it's like that, like early third to mid third price for Garrett is where I'm good with. I'm good with that. He's at like
no
a 30...
tight end that you care much about. Mason Taylor, it's too early for him if he ever is anything as a pass catcher. So who's the wide receiver 2? Who's the wide receiver 3? No one cares. It's just so ultra consolidated, and the talent level, like it's not just the consolidation that you've seen historically, it's the talent differential between Wilson and whoever.
Sure.
Right? It's the talent differential between, Hall and Allen and whoever. Right? Allen's going to get in there, and Allen's going to score. Allen's going to score touchdowns. It's going to be interesting to see Brees Hall get there without the carries inside the 5. Those will be Justin Fields. Those will be Braylon Allen. And then he's scoring from the 22-yard line. He's scoring on screenplays. That's how he can get there. In the Flex 4 game, when I was mock drafting, in the 3rd round, it was just Brees Hall, Chase Brown, Brees Hall, Chase Brown, Brees Hall, Chase Brown. And if you're drafting, do you have Hall over Brown? Because that's close for me.
I have him over Brown. I have my concerns about Brown a little bit. I do really like Taj Brooks. I don't think they want to give Brown a top 5 workload like we pretty much saw last year.
Well, if that's true, then you better be drafting the hell out of Brooks.
Well, I am. I am. Now,
okay. I'm just making sure you are.
The case for Brown, though, is, he has Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah, dude, the offense.
And the defense stinks. So we should assume that Brown should be good. I just find myself really, really liking Brees Hall. I just think the checkdowns for Fields. And I'm honestly it's like a Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry light, where it's like if they're running the read option a lot and there's a ton of eyes on Fields, that could open up some lanes for big runs for Brees Hall as well.
1,500 yards in 2 consecutive seasons as a runner. 3 consecutive seasons with 25-plus catches for Taj Brooks. And I'm showing that up on the screen. And by the way, at the bottom of every player page, at the bottom, you can see their college stats. And subscribe to the Underworld Weekly newsletter. We have 3 news items that we put out there. We don't spam you. Just once a week, we hit you with everything you need to know. The top social media posts, all the news from Player Profiler and Fast Draft, everything you need to know right there. Underworld Weekly. Subscribe on playerprofiler.com. Let's talk Colts. Colts are interesting. We have the shoulder injury for Anthony Richardson. Suddenly now it's fun to talk about the possibility of Daniel Jones playing the whole season. It's something I've been talking about and thinking about for months. And what does that mean? What does that mean for Michael Pittman? What does that mean for Josh Downs? What does that mean for Adonai Mitchell? It's interesting.
I'm a big Josh Downs guy right now. Yeah, I mean he's like an early to mid 8th round pick right now. I mean this is a guy who I think it's kind of nuts when you look at Josh Downs. You think about the fact that he came off that high ankle sprain last year. And you would expect a guy to start off kind of slow off the high ankle sprain. That's what everybody kept saying. He missed week 1 and 2. Week 3, just 5.2 fantasy points on 5 targets, 3 receptions, 22 yards. But then Josh Downs had 3 straight weeks right after, second week back, where he had 22.2 fantasy points, 15.9, 19.5. I mean, and he had, I believe, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, another draft just happened. Another draft just happened. We talked about how McCaffrey went where he should go, middle of the first round. Another draft just happened on Fast Draft, the Flex 4 game. McCaffrey goes at the 205.
Wow. Okay. Well,
are you kidding me?
I mean,
are you kidding me, people? How is this possible? This just happened.
McCaffrey. Who was his first pick? Can you see that? Who was the pick for the guy that got McCaffrey? Or girl?
Bijan.
Yeah.
To start Bijan McCaffrey, what?
That shouldn't even be allowed.
That shouldn't be. I don't know if that's the only. There's not many Bijan McCaffrey teams. There's probably a couple, but woo baby, 11 toes, 11 toes. Good for you.
I gotta get back in there and try to get that stack because that sounds. I mean,
he's got to be feeling good about that.
An insane stack.
Bijan McCaffrey. Let's just see who else. Bijan. Oh God. I just saw his third round pick. Yeah.
Is he Garrett Wilson?
Brees Hall. Of course. We just talked about it. Brees Hall in the middle of the third. It's there every time on Fast Draft. So let's just summarize. This is too good. This team is too good. Bijan McCaffrey, Brees Hall, 4th round. I don't want to look. I'm embarrassed to look. I'm embarrassed. Oh, man. What was it? Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker. Oh man,
that's a risk. That's a guy you're willing to take if you're trying to win.
5th round. Guess we got the 5th round. I haven't seen this guy go this late in the 5th round in a long time. Marion Hampton. This is a guy. Everyone we talked about. Marion Hampton. He's all running back so far. 11 toes. This is the greatest draft.
That's the way to win these, man.
Guess who we got in the last round, 6th round? Guess who we drafted?
It's not a running back. It
is a running back. It's the best possible pick.
It's RJ Harvey.
Even better.
Alvin Kamara.
Travion Henderson.
So to recap, it's Bijan, it's McCaffrey, it's Brees Hall, it's Kenneth Walker, and then he closed it out with Travion Henderson.
Yeah, and before that, Hampton. Yeah, too good. 11 toes. I mean, that's my favorite team so far this year. I'm so glad that we stopped the show to look at that because I was just looking at I'm always curious. Where's McCaffrey? Where does McCaffrey go? And again, he's so polarizing. Is it the 106? Is it the 206? And then just things just broke 11 toes way every step of the way. That's why you draft. That's why we draft. And that's the beauty of like a $5 draft. You can just keep drafting and drafting, hoping that happens to you. You're just leaving yourself open to the possibility that the sky opens up and rainbows and everything all at once.
I was in that draft because I'm on Turbo again, but I probably wasn't in that draft.
I don't think you were in. No, I don't think you were in that draft. Yeah, because I mean, if you want to submit Turbo drafts and it just drafts for you automatically and emails you, it would have happened anyway because you would have had McCaffrey high, you would have had Brees Hall high, you would have had these guys high, you would have had a similar team whether it's on Turbo or in person, whatever it is. One thing I want to mention is that, RJ Harvey is going to be RJ Harvey this year, whether it's J.K. Dobbins in the backfield or Audric Estime. It's not something it doesn't matter. But a guy like Cam Akers going to New Orleans, see, that does hurt Devin Neal.
Yes.
See, that there's a difference. When you're a late round pick, that's all the difference. If it's a 2nd round pick, and they're building and scheming for you from day one, that's different than a dusty running back go, and then that starves you of opportunities early in the season So, Devin Neal, it's kind of devastating for him that this Cam Akers, he's not draftable really. He goes from a guy that's interesting in best ball to not draftable.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that even with Cam Akers signing, I don't know that I would say I'm not still willing to take a chance on Devin Neal. But what I would say is I'm not taking much of a chance on Devin Neal even before it. Maybe in Origins, right? But maybe that's your point, right? If you're looking at the
Well, my
Origins
thing was,
draft,
if you
waste
were
of pick.
drafting in one of these very deep best ball drafts with
Right.
your final running back, it's not, that's fine. Like, to a depth running back, a guy with upside who could help your best ball team, as your like sixth running back or fifth running back. I understand why you might do that. If you had stud running backs and you were just looking for a rookie very late, a guy like Devin Neal is interesting. Now he's just not draftable in those drafts. And yeah, in Origins, he slots in below most of the other running backs that I was considering.
Like a DJ Giddens.
Yeah,
Like
he's
guys
below
like that.
Giddens. I mean, Giddens is a very intriguing handcuff back.
Yeah, I agree.
Very intriguing.
Yeah,
Neal
they
is
like
Neal
to
is
use
now Neal is now. I think that also hurts him even in Dynasty, where it's like, again, you're not paying a price for avoiding him in a rookie draft. You can always just have him as a throw in at some point during the season in a trade if you want to.
Well, and I think this is the inflection point where we get to you have to put your biases aside for guys that you liked as rookies coming into the draft and coming out. Like it's okay to like a guy and also be realistic and say I'm probably not drafting that guy, right? That's kind of what I said about Higgins, where it's like it's not that I'm not drafting Higgins. There's a world where Higgins' ADP gets to a point where I'm comfortable taking chances on him, but I love Jaden Higgins, but I got to be honest that there's a lot of mouths to feed, and there's some guys around him that I prefer. Same with Devin Neal, right? Where it's like you have to be realistic about the situation. There's a ton of guys in that offense, right? Is it a world where maybe this is a shot at Kendre Miller, and Kendre Miller is the guy that's in trouble, and
Kendre Miller's very much in trouble, but still,
right.
The whole case was he was going to outplay Kendre Miller in preseason.
Yeah. Well, Cam Akers, I mean,
They brought him in there to be just a carry eater. He's just going to eat between the tackles, touches between the 20. It's going to be gross.
He was okay last year in the limited time.
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, it takes time to come back from these Achilles tears. That's why I also think, by the way, you mentioned it with Aaron Rodgers. I feel the same about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is not dead yet either.
Me too.
Kirk Cousins is going to help a team. Just watch it.
Well,
watch for it.
He was clearly injured last year. I mean, when you look at the splits, I mean, it was so obvious that he was not healthy after that Denver game, and we're just assuming he sucks now. There's going to be a quarterback injury. Maybe he goes to the Colts. Is there a world where he goes to like the Colts where
Daniel Jones isn't a picture of health?
If that coaching staff wants to save their asses, which they are on the hot seat, there's a world where if Anthony Richardson, is not ready to go, you're telling me that they wouldn't want to bring in Cousins and say, look, we had a quarterback and our offense was able to succeed and we're much better. There's a world. Cousins is going to be not on the Falcons unless something happens with Penix. He's not going to be on the Falcons by at least midway, the latest in the season, in my opinion. I don't see a world where he is.
But there's also other injuries that could happen. If Stafford goes down, Tua goes down. There's lots of scenarios.
Sure.
Where they have to play. Cousins is going to be just waiting by the phone, mercenary, and I'm going to be scooping him in 2QB and Superflex drafts in those leagues. Not drafting him, but I'm scooping him when he signs. And then the players around him. There's going to be discounts on the players. Davante Adams lost his quarterback. They're bringing in Kirk Cousins. Buying opportunity on Davante Adams.
Yeah.
What about Keon Coleman? So Keon Coleman is sort of the antithesis of Jaden Higgins in that he's not that kind of talent, but he got drafted earlier. So Similar draft capital, though. Very similar draft capital. Technically drafted earlier than Jaden Higgins, which is embarrassing for the Bills. And he has a great offense without an alpha to compete with. And there was this chipped bone in his wrist that he was playing through last year. And there were some games where he flashed.
Sure.
Interesting. He's interesting. You have to admit he's interesting. Even if you don't love him, you have to admit he's interesting.
I mean, I'm willing to take chances on Coleman because, I mean, he's tied to Allen. Now, this offense does like to spread the football around, but as you said, there's really not a target hog in this offense. Khalil Shakir, I like Khalil Shakir. I think he is what he is at this point, right? And his ceiling's capped. There's a world where Keon Coleman takes that step forward, and like you said, he is interesting. There was a point in last season where you started to say it looks like he might be taking the next step and started to take a step forward, and then he kind of seemed like he did get hurt, and then he really wasn't the same the rest of the year. Right. I mean, he had a game towards the end of the season. I mean, he had 2 weeks back to back, right, where he had 7 targets, right? He had a touchdown against Tyreek Woolen in Seattle. Like, I'm interested in Coleman. I'm not like, I gotta buy him, I gotta have him, but there's intrigue there if he's like your wide receiver 3 or 4, because you can get flex production at the wide receiver position if Coleman doesn't work out. But it's worth the shot.
I don't like Keon Coleman. But I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. And the ADP currently, it's not going to be where it is. He's going to start making plays in camp, and the ADP is going to start to go up. But as of right now, it makes sense to pick him. Like Michael Mayer. Like, no one loves Michael Mayer. But if Michael Mayer is technically like the de facto third option in that passing game, then he has to be interesting. We've seen teams that can support 2 fantasy relevant tight ends, and the tight end position, it gets really thin really fast once you get past Njoku and Evan Ingram. What is the probability that Michael Mayer outproduces Pat Freiermuth?
I think it's possible.
It's very possible.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there's a world where Zach Ertz outproduces both guys, who is like way farther behind both of them. I like Mayer, though. I think, I would love for them to trade him. I think we all would.
Of course.
That'd be phenomenal. But it seems like
it's just Jacoby Myers at the wide receiver position, which gives him de facto number 2 or makes him the de facto number 1 tight end option if you consider Bowers a receiver.
Sure. And there's going to be a lot of attention on Bowers too. So
yeah.
And they do they're going to run 2 tight end sets there, a good amount, especially with the talent that they have at wide receiver. I mean, we're talking about Thornton, who I like Thornton. I like Jack Besh, but they're guys.
It's going to take time. All these guys are going to take time. It's all going to take time.
Yeah.
And we've got the TD upside with Mayer. I think it's so thin. And especially in tight end premium leagues in the FFPC, Mayer, interesting. Very interesting. Because that's what tight end premium is all about. It's like, okay, he's a de facto number 3 receiver, and because he's a tight end, he's not going to be as productive, but you give him the tight end premium, and suddenly, okay, this is a guy I would consider over some other random wide receiver too. In a tight end premium scenario.
He's interesting. I mean, it really is going to depend. I mean, what about Terrence Ferguson? I mean, is there a world where, I mean, Terrence Ferguson's like a past tight end 20 pick, probably. Yeah. I mean, for Mayer, I think I'd rather Terrence
Ferguson's a rookie, though.
I know, but I mean,
would you rather have Mayer, all else equal, if you're in the FFPC, you'd rather have Mayer or like a Marvin Mims?
Well, are we talking best ball or are we talking about a managed FFPC?
Managed.
I'm taking Mims. I'm still taking Mims. No, I'm taking Mims.
It wasn't obvious. It wasn't clear.
No, yeah, I'm still taking Mims, but yeah, I mean, all the coach speak, the reports coming out, Mayer has looked really good, and it seems like they really like him. So he is intriguing. He is intriguing.
They had me. I know. They had me. They had me. They got me. They got me with the coach speak. They got me. But this was. Hey, I mean, he was arguably a better prospect than Sam Laporta coming out.
Yes.
He was like Mr. Football. Anytime you have a Mr. Football, and they just couldn't resist Bowers, but that's not an indictment of Mayer.
No.
It's one of the rare cases where, hey, we drafted your position the next year, but really it's not about you.
You couldn't pass up on the talent.
No.
I mean, the Jets did because they're idiots, but
right.
Bowers, I mean, it was how could they not? I mean, they didn't have a quarterback fall to them either.
It was they basically they felt like they got squeezed out of what they wanted, and then they had to settle for Mayer, and they had to settle for Bowers, and that ended up being the best thing that could have happened to them. All right, buddy, I'll get you out of here. Give us a bold prediction.
Ooh, bold prediction. So I think Courtland Sutton is going to finish ahead of Terry McLaurin this season. And that's I'm taking it. I think when you look at I know we talked about, you like Terry. Courtland's going cheaper, round behind him. Courtland's done it in back-to-back years with 8 touchdowns, then 10 touchdowns, right? He actually had less touchdowns last year with Knicks than the year before with Russell Wilson. And there's not a lot of guys around there. Both guys play in a situation where not a lot of target, attention guys. And so I think Courtland Sutton's going to outproduce Terry McLaurin this year. I think there's a very real possibility for that if both guys play the same amount of games.
And Marvin Harrison. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.